Over the last year and a half, there's been a huge focus in the mouse market to be able to provide mice that are going to be as light as physically possible. And then you have something like the NP-01 that comes in at 68, 69, essentially 70 grams. And when we have something that everyone can go to, like the GPX at 60, the Zowie U2 coming out at 60, and essentially anything else outside of that, G-Wolf, Slamzoo, Pulsar, all coming in way lower than 60 grams. Continuing to push the limits to have everything as weightless as possible. Is it worth it? Let's get into it. All right, so as we talk about the NP-01, the very first thing that I wanted to talk about is the build quality. Ultimately, this thing is built very, very well, is much like any other mouse that VAXEE has put out. I haven't had any issues with the shell, clicks, or scroll wheel. VAXEE is known for having a good, consistent build quality for the mice that they release, and this is just another one that fits the bill. And ultimately, whenever we're talking about the VAXEE NP-01, the main thing that really is the most important thing to really talk about when it comes to this mouse is the weight. So whenever I originally started using this mouse, it felt a little too heavy. Whenever it came to aiming, I felt like everything was a little off. So I was too short on my flicks. My glide felt a little off, and overall, just my tracking in general felt a little slow. Especially like playing something like Apex, where you have one-on-one really close fights. I felt like, maybe using a car or an R99, something like that. Just my tracking left to right just felt slow in general. But honestly, the more that I've used this mouse, the more comfortable I've got with the mouse. And I've been absolutely beaming with this thing. And whenever it comes to using this mouse in general, like I said in the very beginning, I was kind of struggling. It wasn't like it was a huge difference, but just playing in general, it did feel just a little bit heavy in everything that I did, and it just felt a little uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's just me getting more comfortable with it or just using the skates a little bit more, but the more that I've been using this mouse, the easier everything has gotten. The shape is incredibly comfortable in my hand, so whenever I typically play, I kind of play with this kind of grip in general for most of the mice that I use. So you can tell my pinky is right along this edge. My ring finger is right above that. I have both fingers on the mice, and then my thumb is literally right exactly where they made the hump of the side of the mouse. So using this in hand is very, very comfortable for me. And whenever it comes to using this mouse in general, this has been very, very good. So when we talk about the side buttons, they're in a really good spot for me, especially for my thumb, because you can tell whenever I use it in general, it's literally right here. So it's perfect for my hand size. Whenever it comes to the clicks, they feel very clicky. They're a little heavy, just a tiny bit, compared to something like the LA1. Doesn't feel as heavy. It's a little bit lighter. It's a little heavier on these clicks, but they're not super heavy. Like the original GPX2 whenever it came out. Definitely feels a little heavier, but again, they are very clicky and very spammable, so there's no issues with that. Whenever it comes to actually getting the clicks on this mouse, there is a little bit of a pre-travel for me, but ultimately it's nothing that I would ever feel in game at all. And when we talk about the mouse, I've mentioned this before, using a 3395 is in every mouse that's coming out, unless you're in-game gear. And 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, for any mouse that I use, sensor implementation is never a question. It always feels good. And there's not like a, oh my god, you know, the 33.95 on this compared to a ULX or an LA1 or like pick any mouse. It's not going to be a drastic huge difference. The one thing that really ultimately did feel different to me was the weight. And the longer that I've used this mouse, yeah, it still has a 33.95. Yes, everything, I mean, every other mouse has a 33.95. And most of my tracking issues have been me. It's me not comfortable with the weight initially. And the more that I've gotten used to it, it's only gotten easier and it's only gotten better. And yes, I mean, this is 68, 69, 70 grams. But honestly, whenever I play, it doesn't feel like that. Even my wife, I mean, she doesn't play a whole lot, or at least really understand whenever I have reviews and whatnot. But I had her feel this mouse compared to the Death Adder V3. She couldn't tell a difference. It's a little bit heavier, obviously, with the NP-01, but whenever you hold both of them together, there's not really a huge difference. I mean, the shape of this mouse, yeah, I mean, the weight's a little bit more, but the shape is incredibly comfortable. The clicks, side buttons, scroll wheel, you know me, I typically talk about the scroll wheel probably more than anybody else, but the scroll wheel, super notchy, has like this little grip feeling to it, so I really enjoy it. And really that comes down to just the battery, which, I mean, I've been using this for a little over a week now, and I don't think I've plugged this in at all. And like I said, I mean, initially whenever I first used it, I was like, you know, I don't know if I'm really gonna like it, because whenever I first used it, like I said, I mean, any tracking, any glide, especially 1v1 fights on Apex, a little bit of the finals, but more on Apex, and just felt too slow. I felt like I was missing things that I typically wouldn't. There's just things that I wasn't hitting because everything was a little bit slower. And the more that I've been using this, the more comfortable I've gotten with this mouse. This is a banger. Like, it's been really hard. There's so many mice that I try, and it's like, hey, you know, I can go back to it whenever I feel like it. You know, it might be like a mouse that I use and it's like, hey, you know, it's good, I enjoy it, you know, something I can go back to. I've been trying to use other mice, and this hasn't left my desk since I got it. And I know I say that in other reviews, but this really is a different mouse. It really is. I mean, yes, it is a little bit heavier, but this is a very different mouse than what we've been seeing lately. The VAXEE NP-01, the mouse that went from it's okay to it's a little too heavy to dang, okay, this is actually a really good mouse. When we talk about the mouse market in general, again, we have been pushing and pushing and pushing for, hey, we need everything as light as physically possible. And if it's not light enough, we're going to make a quarter of a mouse. We're going to make the MK1 and make it literally as tiny as possible. We have been pushing for everything to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And to have a mouse like this coming in at 70 grams and feel as good as it does, I mean, again, I mean, initially, whenever I first used it, I don't know what's different. I don't know if I'm just comfortable with it now, or like I just needed to use the skates a little more, but I am dead serious. I am not kidding you. Whenever I first used this mouse, everything felt it felt a little too heavy for me. After everything that I used, I was like, wow, you know, this is a little too heavy. I don't know how to feel. And the longer that I've used this, it has only gotten more comfortable. The shape of this mouse is a absolute banger. The weight, yeah, you know, it might be one of the heaviest mouse, or the heaviest mice that drops this year. It doesn't matter. After using this, the longer that I have used this, it does not matter. Is it cool to have super lightweight mice? Yeah. You want to use a ULX? Great. You want to use the Beast X? Great. You want to use the GPX at 60 grams? Great. don't count this out. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comment section below. Outside of that, I will see you all later. Peace.